Welcome to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 2:45 a.m. and today's date is the 27th of January 2025. Of course, it is the 27 days into the new year. 27 days into the new year. And a lot has gone down this year. Remarkable. I could never forget this year. But it happened. You know what I say every single time? God is great. That's all you can say. God is great. Okay. With that being said, we're going to go straight into the show. Of course, as the title entails, it tells you that Trump tariffs Colombia. And guess what happened? They caved. Okay. Colombia caved because of course everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's what happened. That's what happened to Colombian president. He thought that it could deny the landing of the planes full of immigrants, well, illegal immigrants. And Trump was like, oh, okay, here goes the tariffs. And he mentioned a lot of stuff that he wanted to do. We're going to check that out as well. But first of all, let's see what Fox has here.
Colombian president has already caved to President Trump's threats here. So let's bring in a very special guest here on Live Now from Fox to help break it down. Health Kemper, national security expert. Thank you so much for being with us here. We always appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
All right, so let's talk about this, Hal. It seems like this was all done within a round of golf here for President Trump, who is enjoying this Sunday golfing as he normally does. But it seems like we already got a conclusion to this whole ordeal with taking back the migrants.
Mike, if they were playing a round of golf, I'd say they were playing 9 holes. This went really fast. This was basically part of it was a little slower. Part of the President Trump's deportation program is sending flights down to Latin America. He's got flights going into Guatemala. There's a site there where they're flying a lot of aliens into, and then also, and I think the Guatemala isn't just Guatemalan aliens are actually, or I should say, Guatemalan citizens are actually flying some others from Central America and possibly even Mexico down there. And then they're sending flights to down to Colombia and other places. But the interesting thing is that they've been using military flights. Of course, the military is very responsive. They can get the military stuff set up very quickly, and they did. And Colombia's president took great exception to that. Gustavo Petro, he's more of what's considered a left-wing socialist politician in Latin American politics. And I'm not just saying that. He describes himself as a socialist as well. And so he kind of pushed back. He says, hey, this is not dignified. I don't want military flights down here with Colombian citizens coming down from the United States. It just doesn't look right. And he pushed back, says, we will not accept them. And so President Trump turned around and said, well, we're going to slap a 25% tariff on all Colombian goods coming into the U.S., and if we don't resolve it in the week, it's going to go up to 50%. Well, this would have catastrophic economic implications for Colombia. And so he immediately turned around, and I won't say completely turned around, but he definitely turned around. Some would say partially. I would say if it wasn't a 180-degree turn, it was probably close to a 170-degree turn. He said he will use the presidential jet from Colombia to fly Colombian citizens back down to Colombia. Now, it's not clear at this point if he has completely allowed U.S. military.
Okay, so here was Trump promised to the Colombian president if he did not take the migrant from the United States, the illegal migrants. He says emergency 25% tariffs on goods coming into U.S. Raised to 50% in 1 week. And it says travel ban, immediate visa revocation on Colombian government officials. Of course, they don't want that. Visa sanctions, enhanced customs. Oh, man. banking and financial sanctions to be fully imposed. So nobody wants that. These people have investment in the United States, the bank in the United States. They don't want that. So it was like, okay, I get it. I'm gonna kiss the ring and I'm gonna come take my illegal migrant from your country with my presidential plane. Everybody has a plan, like I said, until they get punched in the face.
Military aircraft to fly Colombian citizens down, but I would say there's a lot of room there for negotiation. And by the way, when you're talking about military planes, when they outfit them for passengers, or what they call packs, in military parlance, when they outfit them, they have these modular seat configurations they put in. So when you're inside, I mean, it's not a nice airline type of feel, but you do have seats. It's got all the stuff you'd have on a regular airline, to include food service and everything else. So it is not some barren back of a plane like we're kind of used to when we see, when we evacuate people out of, for example, out of, these sort of exigent things like Afghanistan or something like that. You just are basically piling people in the back of an empty, C-17 or something like that just to get them out. This is not that. My understanding is these planes have been been basically had the modular seats put in and everything else. But with that said, having a U.S. military plane, he found politically offensive in some ways, and or certainly, it has a certain appearance to it that's different than a civilian airliner. And so he's pushed back, kind of. But you say the presidential plane. By the way, there is no rapid way to refit the presidential plane. I mean, and these poor. I feel bad for the Colombia. Well, look, if you're trying to get to the United States from Colombia, I don't care how you got there. It's a tough trip, and especially if you have to go through the San Blas region, of Central America, where it is just jungles and everything there can kill you. To include most of the people that are there in the jungle as well, who are gang infested, everything else, and then work your way all up to the U.S. And then if you get deported, you're being put on one of the most sumptuous executive jets in the world, flying back down to Colombia. It is, I have to say, for some, they're going to be kind of spinning their heads going, this is very strange. Not thrilled with being deported, but this is a very interesting way to go back.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about how surreal that would be, that you're coming back on a presidential plane. And I just want to wonder, the president there of Colombia, he thought it would be disrespectful to come back on American military planes, but now coming back on his own presidential plane, is he worried, do you think, about maybe what condition it's going to be in when it arrives back?
I think at this point, he's just so desperate to stop the 25%, the 50% tariff schedule that I don't think he's worried about it. And by the way, one of the things that is at the disposal of the president that he can make a quick decision on is releasing his own plane for any purpose. So I think that may have been part of it. It was a quick, I've got to do something sort of reaction. And so I'm sure in the back of his mind, he is a little concerned about the condition of the aircraft after it gets done with certainly a number of flights back and forth. But I think also there is now negotiating room now that he has made the decision to basically back down and allow flights to go, and included his own presidential aircraft in there. I see where there's a lot of negotiating room with the U.S. in terms of, some sort of, maybe one could say, face-saving way that, that he would assure that, he would say, well, I've talked to the U.S. and they're going to retrofit these planes for passengers, and that inside they will look like a regular passenger jet with seats and everything else. And he could say that. The reality is they'd already done that, but he could say it, and I would not be surprised if at the end of the day they work out some sort of arrangement that allows that to happen. The other thing too that President Trump has at his disposal is there is a large civilian reserve air fleet that he could mobilize potentially for this purpose. Those are commercial airliners. Those are also basically commercial aircraft for air freight and everything else. I've seen this in multiple instances where we've used this, mostly with wars in the Middle East. First time I ever saw it in mass was Desert Storm, but we do have this capability, and that is another possibility that they could do. Of course, the concern is security on the aircraft. You know, you're forcibly deporting individuals back to their home countries. I'm sure part of the concern.
Yo, Trump is so wild, yo. He said, I was just informed. He was probably playing golf. You know, people say, well, Trump plays too much golf. Okay, he's golfing too much. He should be doing his work. But, well, here you go. He says, I was just informed that two repatriation flights from the United States with a large number of illegal criminals. He didn't even say illegal migrants. He said illegal criminals were not allowed to land in Colombia. This order was given by Colombia's socialite president Gustavo Petro, who is already very unpopular amongst his people. But Petro's denial of this flight has jeopardized the national security and the public safety of the United States. So directly I've directed my administration. Okay, this isn't gonna let me read it out, but you know,
Would be that one of them could panic or do something aboard the aircraft. They want to make sure they have some ability to restrain that individual from doing something that could potentially endanger the aircraft and all the crew and passengers on it. So that may be part of the rationale why they're using military aircraft, is simply because of who would be on the aircraft and how they could deploy on the aircraft more effectively to maintain that security posture that they need to move those you know aliens, if you want to say illegal aliens, whatever you want to say, the deportees back safely to their home countries.
And Hal, what kind of statement does this make to other countries as far as seeing really the retaliation ways that President Trump could put these tariff measures and really hard pressure on places like Colombia? What does that put for the other parts in the region?
I would say that message that went down to Colombia was heard probably most loudly in Mexico City, and they saw how quickly President Trump reacted with the importation of not just tariffs, but very high tariffs, very aggressive tariffs. That's the sort of thing that could literally cripple Mexico's economy if he was to do the same thing to Mexico. And I think what he was doing was he was sending a message. There has been a shift in politics in both Central and South America. It's moved away from more centrist political leaders to more of the either the further left or further right. If you go down to Argentina, it moved much further right. If you go to Colombia, it moved much further left. In fact, the first left-wing president that they've had there that frankly I can remember in decades, huge shift there. But then they're also dealing with other countries in the region where there has been a shift away from the centrist candidates. I don't think Panama would be amongst those countries. It's been in the news a lot, but I think what they're doing is they're sending a message to all the countries where we're receiving a lot of shall we say illegal aliens or people who are basically coming across the border illegally into our country. That he's sending a message to all those capitals that if you will not allow us to deport them to your country, the reaction by the United States government will be very swift and will be very big. And I think that's a message that's being heard. Although with some of the countries, Guatemala, as I mentioned earlier, I think they've already had that message and they said, we're going to make an accommodation with this right now. So that's not an issue. But I would say other countries, definitely countries like Bolivia are listening. Countries like Peru are definitely listening. Certainly other countries, just all up and down, Central America, South America are listening. And probably even countries.
everybody knows this is not the time to F around. Because if you do F around, you're going to find out real quick. Okay, this ain't the time to be messing around with the OG because you're going to get it. You are going to get it. All right, so don't be doing that. Do not be doing that. Okay. All right. Everybody knows adults are back in the White House. Okay. Everybody knows. Nobody's arguing, okay? Everybody thinks they have something to say until they get punched in the face, all right?
Immigration enforcement is in full effect, with mass deportations underway all across the country. Mexico and Guatemala have already received flights of migrants, while Colombia initially refused before their president reversed course. Trump had been threatening Colombia with tariffs over the refusal, but those look like they're no longer needed. And here in the United States, things are running smoothly. Border czar Tom Homan is leading the charge in Chicago as he oversees arrests in the Windy City. While the DA of Los Angeles says it is now cooperating with federal officials to enforce immigration laws. We are also learning that ICE has made arrests in Atlanta, as the Washington Post is also reporting that the Trump administration wants between 1,200 and 1,500 migrant arrests a day. So far, their efforts are proving to be successful. DA agents in Colorado arrested 50 illegals this morning, including members of the Trinidad gang. Meanwhile, there are other illegals with ties to TDA that were also arrested in San Antonio, Texas, in Nashville, Tennessee. It is believed that they were caught and released at the border by the Biden administration back in 2023. CB Cotton has been tracking this all across the country today for us. CB, to you.
Hi, Molly. Well, on the ground in Chicago, President Donald Trump's expanded show of force on immigration is playing out. ICE announcing the start of targeted operations with the help of 5 other federal agencies, to include ones from the Department of Justice. Now, the scale and scope of the arrest are still not clear, but Fox News is told the first arrest was someone who remained in the country illegally despite having killed a 19-year-old woman while driving under the influence. The Justice Department's acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove was on the ground in Chicago today, telling Fox in part, quote, "This morning I had the privilege of observing brave men and women of the department deploying in lockstep with DHS to address a national emergency arising from 4 years of failed immigration policy." Bove also warned that there will be consequences for anyone who tries to stop the deportation efforts. Video obtained by our colleague Matt Finn shows incoming border czar Tom Homan setting the tone for how things will play out.
If you don't want to help, just move on. I appreciate all the federal agencies here. Again, first one, all the government operations put pressure from us throughout the nation. We're the first. Let's make this the best.
So while Chicago appears to be the start of multi-agency deportation efforts, we know ICE alone has carried out several raids across the country this week, leading to the arrest of Trinidad gang members, MS-13 gang members, murder and rape suspects, and one known or suspected terrorist. Molly.
CB Cotton, thank you. You know, we had reporting this week right out of Boston, all across the country. We've seen this reporting of ICE bringing in suspects, and now a multi-agency approach. Tom Homan's boots on the ground in Chicago. This is really clearly an aggressive beginning to the promised plans of mass deportation.
And super encouraging, too. I mean, CB just went down the list. Trinidad, MS-13, murder, rape, terrorist. And you're learning that Tom Homan is bringing all the assets of government together to go get those people. That's awesome. Go faster. And that's what President Trump said. He said, apprehend more people every day. Joe, you were quoting some numbers earlier, like 10 to 15 million or 8 million, whatever you want to call it. The number of people who have come in over the last 4 years. To actually deport that number of people in a year, you'd have to be getting like 21,000 a day. OK, yeah. The president's calling for 1,200, 1,500. So he's doing what he said he would do, focusing on the biggest threats first. And if you live in any of these cities, you got to be saying to yourself, I feel just a little bit safer today because the good guys are going after the bad guys.
Yeah, all across the heartland, too, and highlighting Nashville, Tennessee with the Trinidad issue. Tennessee is, one of the biggest parts of this as they're going after this gang that has now created a foothold in a multitude of cities all across America.
You don't think Tennessee and think gangs, right? You think New York, you think L.A. This is a 90-10 issue. Right, amazing. I got to meet the 10 sometime. In terms of 90 support, getting criminal gangs who came into this country illegally out of here through deportation, 10 support it. Yet, somehow, 148 Democrats would not support the Laken-Riley Act. How do you explain that? Possibly, that's in the House. How do you explain that to any of your constituents? Like, oh, no, actually, I'm against this because why? It's like saying, you know, I'm against cancer research. That's a really bad thing. Like, that's how bad this is. Democrats have to get on board with this because this is why Donald Trump is Donald Trump 2.0 right now in the White House. Right. Immigration was the biggest issue in this campaign, maybe outside of men competing against women in sports, which was very underrated as far as being an issue, and the economy as well. So, look, we have laws. We have to enforce them. 2/3 of the American people, according to like CNN polls, support mass deportation. So get on board or, you know, roll the dice and take your chances, Lisa.
And speaking of getting on board, Colombia has quickly changed its tune as far as allowing migrant flights back in.
Well, yeah, and President Trump gets knocked a lot for his use of tariffs, but this is where it comes in, right? You need that leverage over them to get them to acquiesce. It worked with Colombia. He threatened a 25% tariff on Colombia's imports. And so it worked for him. And we've seen things like there was a Department of Homeland Security intelligence report that Maduro's Maduro regime was releasing prisoners from Venezuela that were coming here via caravans as well. So how many of these countries are going to want to take back, you know, terrorists, gang members, criminals? So you have to have some means to force them to do so. And it has an impact as well. I mean, we even saw at the end of November that Mexico's peso and Canada's dollar dropped after President Trump threatened them with tariffs to get them to step up on illegal immigration. We saw the use of tariffs work during his first administration as well when he threatened Mexico, and then they all of a sudden decided to step up to the plate. So I think he's using it very wisely, and today demonstrated that with Colombia.
By the way, if I could jump in here real quick, Jackie Heinrich reporting that Colombia is now reversed its decision and is now, quote, offering his presidential plans to help, you know, bring deportees from the U.S. back into the country. So it's working.
Little change of tune, right? Yeah.
In less than one day, the guy goes from no deportation flights to my country to we can use my plane to get it done.
Amazing.
And Trump was the guy in the middle of all that. All right, the list of criminal migrants keeps growing. 4 illegals from Chile were arrested Wednesday for breaking into NFL star Joe Burrow's $7 million home earlier this month. Newly released police body cam footage shows one of the alleged criminals, it's crazy, wearing a Bengals hat, which is the team that Burrows plays for. Police also found an LSU shirt on the crooks, which is where Burrow went to college, as well as tools they think were used for the break-in. This is just the latest incident in a string of game day burglaries taking place at the homes of pro athletes like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Investigators say they have arrested at least 6 South American burglary organizations, including 5 based in Chile. A few months ago, the NFL and NBA and NHL were warned with a memo saying, quote, the FBI has linked some burglaries to South American transnational theft groups that are sophisticated and seemingly well-organized networks that incorporate advanced techniques and technologies. How crazy is it that they're wearing the Bengals and LSU gear they stole from the guy? And these gangs are everywhere, Joe. And for years, nobody's done a thing about them. And now we're finally going after, like, the most obvious criminal rings in the country.
It's a big middle finger, right? I'm going to go in.
First things first, if you come into the United States illegally, what are you even doing? Your first act is coming into the United States illegally? How are you going to do anything good if you do come in here illegally? Trump is insane. Don't come into the United States. The United States needs immigrants. Okay, this is just the facts. You can say, well, no. Actually, okay, the United States needs specialty. Okay, they need people who actually know what they're doing, people who love the United States, people who are specialized, that have special sets of skills to bring up the economy of the United States. You need these people, okay? You need these people. You need doctors. You need engineers. You need creators. You need these people in the United States. But you cannot afford to come in here illegally. That is just against the law. Okay, so, and that's why H-1B visa is a big thing, because Trump was like, you know what? support H-1B visa. Elon was like, I would fight to the end of the world to um, preserve H-1B visa. These guys are doctors, engineers, like I mentioned. If you go to the hospital right now, you would see so many African doctors, so many Asian doctors. You would see so many Indian doctors. Why? Because these guys are specialized. Okay, they are specialized, and they they are of service to the United States. They're actually useful to the United States. You know what I mean? So they're not coming in here to commit a crime or nah. They're coming here legally, and they're putting themselves to work to bring, like I mentioned, to bring up the economy of the United States. Because if you have good doctors, competent engineers, great creators, of course, this is what makes the United States. The United States is a land of opportunity. Okay, it's a land of opportunity, and most people came here. Even Trump. Okay, his great grand parent are not Americans. Okay, they migrated here. But look what Trump has been able to build. Look what Trump's father was able to build. Arnold Schwarzenegger was um, was not born in the United States. Elon Musk was not born in the United States. Okay, Kevin O'Leary was not born in the United States. Melania Trump was not born in the United States. So many people that have done great things in the United States were not born in the United States. So, what is the difference between those guys and the people that are being deported? It is a factor of illegal and legal migration. If you come in here illegally, you're going to have to be deported. But if you come here, you follow the due process. You come through Homeland Security, which is, coming through the airport. And when you get here, you file for change of status or whatever. However you go about it, just make sure you do it legally. That's all they're talking about. This is all Trump is talking about. How is this not common sense?
Not only steal your home, I'm going to wear Bengals and LSU Tiger gear.
Wear this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I won a state championship for Wayne Valley in New Jersey, and I'm glad I didn't pursue my dream of playing in the NFL because my home would have been burglarized by now, right? So good thing I stayed off the radar. But it's amazing that it's so brazen now because these folks feel like even if I'm arrested, there's a good chance I'm going to be back out into the street anyway, that they will go after Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Joe Burrow. These guys are the biggest names in the NFL, and they're targeting them specifically because it's a big scalp, right? See, I stole not just from any home, I stole from one of the most popular people in the world home kind of thing.
The fact is, the truth is, only people who don't have common sense, okay? Maybe illiterates would say, no more H-1B visa. What do you mean? You're not a doctor. You're not an engineer, okay? You don't code. You don't know how to code. You cannot program, okay? Yeah, no more H-1B visa. Are you a doctor? Are you actually trying to find cancer cure? Are you a cybersecurity engineer? Are you trying to fortify AI? Trump just signed a $500 billion AI Stargate project. Who do you think is going to build all of this this infrastructure when it comes to AI? H-1B visa engineers. You can cry, okay? As long as you are not an engineer, you ain't got nothing to say, okay? AI is going to move fast. And what makes the United States great is its people. The United States is not just great because of the land. No, it's great because of the people inside the United States. You and me, okay? The great patriot of the United States. That's what makes America great. Capable hands in the United States. That's what makes America great. So if you're saying you want America to be or continue to be the greatest country on earth, you need great minds. You need to immigrate great minds to the United States. Okay? How is Elon considered an American? Elon Musk is considered American. He's not considered a South African. He was born in Pretoria, South Africa. And then he moved to Canada because, of course, his mom is from Canada. So he got Canadian naturalization before he even got the United States naturalization. But the United States claims Elon Musk. Why? Because he is capable. Elon Musk is probably known to be one of the greatest innovator of our time. NASA needs Elon. The United States needs Elon Musk. Okay, so deport everybody. You gonna send Elon back to South Africa? No. No. This is the wealthiest human being on earth. Well, financially. So what, you going to deport Elon Musk? He is an asset to the United States and so many other people. So many other people, yo. So if you're not capable, if you're not competent, and you were born in the United States, you're going to allow H-1B visa guys come in here and do what they can to make America great again. I'm sorry. Because you do not code, like I said. You don't write programming. You're not a doctor. You're not a surgeon. Okay? You're not a gynecologist or whatever. You're not a lawyer. You're not trying to make America great. You're just here looking and not doing anything productive. You would have to be productive, okay? You would have to actually be an asset to the United States. You can't just talk. Nah. You're going to have to be an asset to the United States, okay? You're going to have to serve in some way, shape, or form. When you see people like, what's the name? Pete Hegseth, all these guys are asset to the United States. Okay? You see people like Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is building an army of journalists, media, propelling the right, helping win election. Charlie Kirk is literally helping Republicans win election. And that's what the goal is here. I'm here to basically join the America Great Again movement and help win election with what we're building right here. We're building people that have common sense. We're building minds that have common sense already. Okay. We're not converting anybody. You don't have to watch me and convert yourself. You don't have to like this show. Okay. It's just when you watch it, you resonate with it. And it's like, okay, fine. Common sense is what we talk about over here. All right. And as time goes on, we're going to be among the people that help win election. We were streaming Trump's rallies, Trump's roundtable conversation since last year summer. Okay. So you can hate it. You can, say whatever you want to say, but the United States needs immigrants. However, does the United States need illegal immigrants? Absolutely not. Come to the United States and come legally.
In terms of athletes, and this is going to change, I have a feeling, under a Trump administration where crime is going to be dealt with seriously.
Lisa, they felt utterly comfortable under Joe Biden. Like, we can do whatever we want.
It's like those videos with the little kids with chocolate all over their face and their hands. And like the parents like, did you eat the chocolate cupcake? And they're like, no. Yeah, they're walking around with the jersey. That's the craziest thing about all of this, Brian, is that the Biden administration allowed this to happen, that we had completely open borders and allowed these criminals to come here to the United States to cede or country to terrorists, to gang members, and the rest of it. And we saw Tom Homan double down on our commitment, the Trump administration's commitment, to not only deport these criminal illegal aliens, but also to extend beyond that on ABC's This Week with Martha Raddatz. And she even pointed out that there's at least 700,000 to 1 million criminal illegal aliens here, grounds for deportation right now. We know there's also at least 1.4 million who have their final deportation number. So that's over 2 million people right there that you could just get out pretty easy. But look, this is something the American people support. Yeah. The New York Times found that 55% of Americans support deporting all illegal aliens. So now's the time to do it when you still have the juice and you're the first Republican president to get the popular vote in 20 years.
Well, and Molly, the the burglary of stars and athletes gets the headlines,
Right.
but Americans care mostly because they know that they're also victims of this stuff in smaller ways, but no less important. And sometimes it's not just your stuff, it's your life.
Yeah, and the terrible people that'll go and read the paper and find out where the funerals are and then go to the houses of the family members.
Wow.
This is like the high profile stuff where the athletes are getting their big ticket items taken, and which is surprising because sometimes they have, rather sophisticated systems, and these gangs manage to know how to get past them. But on the smaller scale, you're absolutely right. The American people, the little guy, is also falling victim to these people, because when they can't go after the athlete and the big money and the big score, then they are going to be turning to do what they can and get what they can. Holman on the ground telling Fox News today the national security threats were also taken off. This is from Matt Finn reporting there in Chicago. We're taking off the streets of Chicago, a multi-agency operation today. DOJ, FBI, DEA, ATF.
This man is deporting illegal immigrants, and somebody in the chat is saying this man is going to break down the country to pieces and you are going to be in tears. Biden was falling off of planes. Okay, he was falling off stairs, falling off stages, walking into the Amazon rainforest to talk to the jaguars and the snakes. Okay, sleeping in Angola on the world stage. Y'all weren't talking about he's going to break down this country. He broke down this country, okay? You saw the prices of gas. You saw the prices of homes. You saw the prices of groceries. You saw inflation. You saw interest rate. You saw the border. You saw wars that weren't existent. But you want to say Trump is going to break down the country. Your president, Joe Biden, already broke down the country. Now Trump is trying to fix it. You still talking, man? You better sit down and enjoy the greatness.
I was covering Biden at the time, and I remember coming to my editor and saying, "Hey, we need to write about the Hunter Biden laptop." And I was told this came from on high at Politico: "Don't write about the laptop. Don't talk about the laptop. Don't tweet about the laptop."
Politico responded in a statement to Primetime saying, quote, "It's BS." Former Democrat donor Nicole Shanahan joins me now. How are you, Nicole?
I'm very good, Jesse. How are you doing?
I am great. Tell me about how the media has digested the Trump presidency so far.
Well, I mean, the left-wing media, the mainstream media is in a tizzy. I think they only could get so much out of the Elon Musk Nazi salute falsehood, and they don't know what to do. I mean, we see the party turning on itself. Chuck Schumer's statement that this was all Biden and it was all Biden's fault. I mean, Biden is a geriatric patient at this point. He's been managed by handlers. He could barely get through a press conference, let alone a full day of presidential activity. Chuck Schumer, that's completely false. You know exactly who's been handling Biden. You've been involved with it, as has Nancy Pelosi. They've been running the show. And in their embarrassment and in true lame old Democratic Party outrageous fashion, they point fingers at each other when things don't turn out their way.
Kamala Harris.
And the donors are upset. Yeah,
I mean, I would be upset if I were a donor, too. They just lit your money on fire and then told you too bad. Give me some more money. Kamala Harris doesn't know what she wants. She wants to go grocery shopping with her husband, and that's fine. Where do you see, or what are you hearing about Kamala World now?
Well, she's trying to rebrand, and, people within her campaign are looking around and asking, what the heck just happened? What was that? We just burned through billions of dollars. And a lot of it went to these celebrity endorsements. And the whole thing was a scam. It was all smoke and mirrors, and they don't have a lot of authenticity over there. So Kamala Harris needs to rebrand, and I don't know that they're going to get behind her for running for California governor. I don't think she can win.
What about Gavin Newsom? I mean, that's he's got a heavy lift, and that's putting it lightly.
Yeah, his term's up. He's reached his term limits. He's trying to go out on top. It's not looking good. His state is on fire, and the people of this state are calling out his mismanagement, egregious negligence in some cases. We have people running up to him and saying, I've been trying to clear this brush in these parklands behind my house, and no one's coming out to do it.
Well, it looks like Adam Schiff got punched in the face, and we just hope he's okay, and we hope he heals quickly, because we have...
What? Adam Schiff got punched in the face? Gavin Newsom, well, like Trump calls him, Gavin Newsom, you think he's going to run for presidency in 2028? I mean, what are you doing? You can't even solve the problem in California. You're trying to run this country? I don't think so.
Welcome back, America. We're here with our friend Peter Schweitzer, one of the great investigative reporters, and nobody has done more to expose the Joe Biden crime family than Peter Schweitzer over the years, with his writings, his books, his appearances, among other places here on this program. And Peter, there you watch as Joe Biden systematically undertakes the greatest cover-up, really, in governmental history. A senator, vice president, president, people used his office, his name, his position to make millions, to shake down foreign governments, even enemy foreign governments. And then he pardons his son, which effectively is pardoning him. And then you have these preemptive pardons of the immediate family. It must be fun at Thanksgiving. The next Thanksgiving, they're all going to stand there and, they'll sit around with the turkey and they'll thank God that Papa Bear pardoned all of them. What do you make of this? You, more than anybody else, should have a very fulsome view of this.
Yeah, Mark, I think that these pardons are the single most corrupt acts of any American president in U.S. history. And I don't say that lightly. I say that because what we're talking about is a level of corruption that involved tens of millions of dollars going to the Biden family, and what the sources of those funds are. This is not some, paving contractor back in a congressional district paying off a congressman. That's bad enough. These are foreign governments. These are foreign adversaries. And the problem is that the Bidens have now globalized corruption. They've created a situation where American politicians can effectively be bought off by our foreign adversaries. And that's what happened with the Clintons. That's what happened with the Bidens. The three countries were China, Russia, and Ukraine, all of which are highly corrupt, all of which who wanted something from Joe Biden as vice president and as president, and who got those things from this president. And you're quite right to point out that these pardons are of his family, but they are effectively a pardon of him. Because there is really no way to investigate or to prosecute Joe Biden for this influence peddling scheme if all the family members who he did it with are now let off the hook legally, which is what these pardons do.
It's not that he thinks Donald Trump will come after them. It's that he knows they're corrupt, isn't it? And haven't you written chapter and verse on this corruption, the millions of dollars that have flowed into the Biden crime family?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mark. I mean, look, let's look at the timeline. And we talked about this first. The first place when I published my book, I came on your show and we talked about this back in 2018, is the timing is clear. So in January of 2009, Joe Biden is sworn in as vice president of the United States. And literally 3 months later, Hunter Biden sets up an international financial firm and starts doing business, I'll put that in quotation marks, in the most corrupt places on the planet, China, Russia, and Ukraine. And the money starts to flow. And it's important to point out, by the way, Mark, that these pardons are very specific. They begin with any crimes that might have been committed from January 2014 going forward. And that is precisely the month when the money starts to flow from China, Russia, and Ukraine. They get tens of millions of dollars from Chinese entities that are close to the Chinese state, that are also linked to Chinese intelligence. In the spring of 2014 is when he agrees with Burisma, this Ukrainian energy company, corrupt energy company. He takes in millions from them. And this is the same time that Russian oligarch, Yelena Baturina, sends $3.5 million to Hunter Biden. Those things all happen at that period of time. So these are the deals that have taken place. Joe Biden was the point person on policy towards China. He was the point person under the Obama administration on Ukraine policy. And guess what? Both of those countries, people were sending the Bidens millions of dollars.
So he pardons his family members, preemptive pardon, abuses that power. There's simply no question about it. We've never seen anything like this before. He pardons his son after months and months of saying he would not pardon his son. He realizes that they're going to be on the hook if there's a serious investigation into the Biden crime family. But doesn't that also tell us another thing, Peter Schweitzer? And I want you to address this as soon as we return, that he was very comfortable. He felt protected with Merrick Garland at the helm of the Department of Justice, with the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C., with the head of the criminal division of the Department of Justice. He felt very comfortable that despite all the corruption and the graft and all the rest, that Department of Justice would never investigate him while he was president. But he did unleash it against his political...
This is what happens. He pardoned his entire family. What? Why? Why would you pardon your entire family if you say that you are not afraid of anything? If you say that your family is so innocent, why would you pardon them? They were so innocent. They were going to go through the proper channels. They're going to get, of course, investigated. And if everything turns out to be great, they're going to walk. Okay? But you didn't let that happen because you don't trust what? The Justice Department? You don't trust the DOJ anymore. This man was saying he wasn't going to pardon Hunter Biden. He wasn't going to pardon anybody. But he did pardon his entire family. What? How is that even something that we would not talk about? Every American should be talking about their former president, the 46th Joe Biden, pardoning his entire family. Now, this is what every president would do when they become president now. It's like, I'm just going to pardon my entire family, do something very stupid or bad, and I'm just going to pardon my entire family. What's going to happen? He pardoned his entire family. That should be illegal. Matter of fact, the president should not be able to pardon their family. This is something they should, start working on. No president should be able to pardon their family members. You can pardon anybody else, okay? But do not pardon. You are not allowed to pardon your family members. Yeah, that should work. That right there is the only way that every president's family would stay clean. Because with this presidential pardon, they're gonna pardon everybody in their families,
As somebody who spent at least half a century in the conservative constitutionalist movement, the three great conservative constitutionalist presidents in the last century, Calvin Coolidge, Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has the potential to be the greatest of the three. And I want to give you a little bit of my background for those of you who don't know. I don't just come on here because I have a TV show. I come on here because I have decades of experience in the conservative movement, in the constitutionalist movement, in the liberty movement. And I want you to know that with my background, that when I say that Donald Trump has the potential of being the greatest conservative president in the last century, I mean it. 1976 and 80, I worked in the Reagan primaries. 1980, I worked in the Reagan general campaign. I spent 8 years in top executive positions in the Reagan administration, including Chief of Staff of the Department of Justice and Deputy Solicitor of the Department of Interior, as well as a stint at the White House. And from the Reagan Revolution to the Tea Party movement in 2010, I was involved in the Tea Party movement, one of the outspoken leaders of the Tea Party movement. I wrote the most widely read conservative book since Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative and Milton Friedman's Free to Choose. This one here, Liberty and Tyranny. Millions and millions of you read this book, a primer on conservatism and liberalism. I've been involved as one of the leaders in the Convention of States movement with our friend Mark Meckler, over 5 million members. I have one of the largest syndicated radio shows that I've had for nearly 25 years on the planet, with millions and millions of listeners on AM and FM terrestrial radio, through podcasts, through YouTube, through Sirius satellite, and so forth and so on. That's thanks to you. And of course, on Fox, when we're not dealing with football like tonight, and this will be the end of it, we have the #1 primetime evening weekend program. We're very proud of it. And we're very proud to be here. And I was president of Landmark Legal Foundation. It's the most consequential constitutional conservative legal foundation in half a century. And thanks to our litigation and the help of others, school choice is now a possibility. And you're thinking, well, Mark, aren't you lovely? Good man, pat yourself on the head. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to provide you with some of my credentials. So when I tell you that Donald Trump is one of the most conservative and has the potential to be the most conservative president this entire century, I know what I'm talking about. He's consequential. He's historic. He's iconic. The things he did in his first term and the things he's doing now right out of the chute, we've never seen anything like this. Now, some of you might be saying, well, what about all these tariffs? I'm a free market conservative. Well, I'm as free market as you can get. But I went back and I looked. I looked at President Reagan. You see, Lighthouser, who is the head, basically, of trade and tariffs for President Trump, was the deputy under Ronald Reagan. And so, as our friends at Cato in 1988 pointed out, and they were very angry about it, Reagan was more into, say, quotas. He was more into limitations on what other countries can ship into our country. Let me give you some examples, as Cato pointed out. He forced Japan to accept restraints on auto exports. The agreement set total Japanese auto exports at 1.68 million vehicles in 1981-82, 8% below 1980 exports. He tightened up considerably the quotas on imported sugar. Imports fell from an annual average of 4.85 million tons in 79 to 81 to an annual average of 2.86 million tons from 82 to 86. That's a massive drop. He negotiated, did Reagan, to increase restrictions of the multi-fiber arrangement and extended restrictions to previously unrestricted textiles. The administration unilaterally changed the rule of origin in order to restrict textile and apparel imports further and imposed a special ceiling on textiles from communist China. And finally, it pressured Hong Kong, Taiwan, and South Korea, the largest exporters of textiles and apparel to the United States, into highly restrictive bilateral agreements. Reagan required 18 countries, including Brazil, Spain, South Korea, Japan, Mexico, South Africa, Finland, and Australia, as well as the European community, to accept what he called voluntary restraint agreements, which weren't voluntary, to reduce steel imports, guaranteeing domestic producers a share of the American market. When 3 countries not included in the 18, Canada, Sweden, and Taiwan, increased steel exports to the U.S., the administration demanded talks to check the increase. The administration then slapped tariffs and quotas on so-called specialty steel. Reagan imposed a 5-year duty beginning at 45% on Japanese motorcycles for the benefit of Harley-Davidson. He raised tariffs on Canadian lumber and cedar shingles. He forced the Japanese into an agreement to control the price of computer memory chip exports, and he increased Japanese purchases of American-made chips. When the agreement was allegedly broken, the administration slapped a 100% tariff on $300 million worth of Japanese electronics and goods. Reagan pressed Japan to force its automakers to buy more American-made parts. He demanded that Taiwan, West Germany at the time, Japan, and Switzerland restrain their exports of machine tools, with some market shares rolled back to 1981 levels. Other countries were warned, you better not increase their shares in our American market. He accused the Japanese of dumping roller bearings because the price did not rise to cover a fall in the value of the yen. The U.S. Customs Service was ordered to collect duties equal to the so-called dumping margins. He accused the Japanese of dumping forklift trucks and colored picture tunes in the United States. He redefined dumping in order to make it easier to bring charges of unfair trade practices against certain competitors. I had not known all this until I started to really dig in. Coolidge was a big tariff guy. Reagan, more quotas than tariffs. And of course, Trump is a big tariff guy. Everybody knows McKinley was a tariff guy. You know who else was? Hamilton, Jefferson, Lincoln. I'm not saying you should support them or oppose them. I'm saying that this is actually rather typical until really after World War II of the positions of many Republicans and many of our founders took, and really more Reagan than we may have realized. Japan agreed to suspend its 28% tariff on cigarette imports. Taiwan agreed to open its markets to beer, wine, and cigarettes after the president threatened retaliation. Japan agreed to buy American semiconductors.
Most people don't know that before income tax was established in 1913, tariffs were the main source of revenue for the United States government. Most people don't even know that, okay? Federal income tax was not a thing before 1913. It was established in 1913, and tariffs sort of kind of like washed away. Before that, tariffs were the main source of revenue for the United States government. Of course, tariffs were a tax on imported goods and services. Okay? Most people are going to complain, well, tariffs are going to make everything expensive. Would you rather have tariffs? Or would you rather have federal income taxes? Well, cancel federal income taxes and leave tariffs. This is what Trump is trying to do, because people are like, well, he may like eliminate income taxes. People are like, well, that's not possible, because you guys would not let him work. Y'all gonna talk, and not go study. Go read, go educate yourself. In the 1800s, early 1900s, tariffs were the main source of revenue for the United States government before federal income taxes. Comprende?
The European community agreed to give U.S. citrus producers easier access. Japan eliminated tariffs on 137 leather items and reduced tariffs on aluminum products. South Korea reduced its barriers to U.S. motion pictures and television programs, and so on and so on and so on. Mr. Conservative, Ronald Reagan. What else has Donald Trump done? Look at this. He's taken the most extensive steps right out of the box to deal with the border, as he did in his first term. The establishment of a physical wall and other barriers at the U.S. borders, he's going to complete it, deterring and preventing the entry of undocumented individuals into the United States. This is what he's announced and implementing within literally 24 hours of taking the oath. Detaining aliens apprehended on suspension of violating federal or state law, that is, undocumented migrants, and removing them promptly. Pursuing criminal charges against undocumented migrants and those who facilitated their unlawful presence in the U.S., notably ending the practice of catch and release. Enacting federal-state partnerships to enforce these immigration policies, obtaining complete operational control of the borders of the United States. This is what he's directed the United States government to do. That includes deploying sufficient personnel to the borders. He's just ordered active duty military to the border. Terminating parole programs for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. Why? Well, communists and terrorists and revolutions. That's why. Utilizing advanced vetting techniques to determine familiar relationships and biometric scanning for all individuals encountered or apprehended by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He's declared a national emergency at the southern border of the United States in order to put military personnel there. Now, what else has he done? He's involved in the biggest deportation of illegal aliens since Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower. Oh, yes, the great Dwight Eisenhower, who everybody praises. They praise him as sort of a moderate, centrist Republican president. The left points to him all the time. Can't we have an Eisenhower type, such a uniter? Okay. Not so much. In the 1950s, as many as 3 million illegal migrants had walked and waded northward over a period of several years for jobs in California, Arizona, Texas, and points beyond, writes the Christian Science Monitor. Well, Ike was obsessed with removing them. He said the rise in illegal border crossings by Mexican, his word, wetbacks, not my word, to a current rate of more than 1 million cases a year has been accompanied by a curious relaxation in ethical standards extending all the way from the farmer exploiters of this contraband labor to the highest levels of the federal government. Years later, the late Herbert Brunel Jr., who was Eisenhower's first attorney general, said in an interview with this writer, the writer of this piece, that the president had a sense of urgency about illegal immigrants when he took office. America, quote, was faced with a breakdown of law enforcement on a very large scale, said the former attorney general. When I say large scale, I mean hundreds of thousands were coming in from Mexico every year without restraint. The orders came straight from the top, from Eisenhower, the new president. He had put a former West Point classmate, General Joseph Swing, in charge of immigration enforcement. General Swing's fast-moving campaign soon secured America's borders, an accomplishment no other president has equaled. Illegal migration had dropped 95% by the late 1950s. So what Trump is proposing is not radical. It's common sense, as he puts it. And when he says common sense, for many of us, it means conservative, because conservative is common sense. What about the federal bureaucracy? Trump is doing things now no president has ever done, right out of the box. This is the Hill. The president signed orders mostly aimed at the federal government workforce, targeting some of former President Biden's executive orders in an effort to undo them. He signed an order to implement a regulatory freeze that aims to prevent bureaucrats from issuing any more regulations until the Trump administration has full control of the government. He then signed a federal government hiring freeze with an exception for military hiring until full control of the government is achieved. Trump signed a separate order directing federal workers to get back into their damn offices and leave their basements. He also signed an order withdrawing immediately from the Paris Agreement, you know, where the communist Chinese can build 100 coal power plants every week or every month, which stymies us. In other words, he's not going to export sovereignty and our governmental decision-making to some international bunch of leftists and Marxists. Additionally, he signed orders to address the cost of living, prevent government censorship of free speech. He's actually one of the great civil libertarians. He signed an order to prevent government censorship of speech, which has been on the rise in a very aggressive way, not just since Woodrow Wilson, but in modern times, since Barack Obama, and certainly Joe Biden. He said enough of that. He's a free speech, Bill of Rights president. This is very, very important to understand. What else makes him one of the great conservative presidents right now? Taxes. President Trump, in the past, his tax cuts, the biggest gross tax cuts in American history, over $5.5 trillion over 10 years. He cut the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%, the largest percentage point reduction of the top marginal rate in history. And now he wants to cut 21 to 15% for companies in America and locating in America. Why? To massively increase economic growth, prosperity, jobs. Jobs. The child tax credit was increased by $573.4 billion over 10 years, larger than any previous change to credits specifically targeting families. Trump's tax cuts included some of the most substantial reforms to the tax code in American history. For example, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act nearly doubles the standard deduction to simplify state filing. And now, of course, in a new Trump presidency, he's got several policies, including extending the expiring 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Cuts Act changes. He needs Democrats to do this. If he doesn't get them, you're going to have a 45% tax increase. Bring back the deduction for state and local taxes, SALT. He wants to increase that. Reducing the corporate tax rate for domestic production, as I explained. Exempting various types of income from income tax, like overtime, tips, other things that he had mentioned. Repealing the green energy tax credits, which, of course, are a big sum of money given to left-wing groups primarily. Look at energy. Have we ever had a president like this? Ronald Reagan came into the presidency. The first two things he did is he eliminated the regulations on the production of natural gas and then oil. So what did Trump do? Ending Biden's policies of climate extremism, streamlining permitting, reviewing for rescission all regulations that impose undue burdens on energy production and use, including mining and processing of non-fuel materials. Energy actions empower consumer choice in vehicles, he pointed out, shower heads, toilets, washing machines, light bulbs, and dishwashers. No more of the government meddling in your bathroom, your bedroom, your home, and your cars. He declared an emergency, used all necessary resources to build critical infrastructure, whether it's the electrical grid, whether it's pipelines, whatever it is, and leasing to massive wind farms that degrade our national landscapes and fail to serve American energy consumers. These are
You can say whatever you want to say about Trump, but numbers don't lie, yo. Numbers don't lie. He's been very active, okay? On the first day, he signed 42 executive orders with 20 with with 200 actions on them. 42 executive orders with 200 actions on them. So like nobody has ever done that. Nobody. Okay, man, today is going to be a very short life. Short life. What we got? I promise you, I'm just trying to come here and be strong, man. My life is a chaos right now. My life is chaotic right now.
Joining me now is Senate Majority Leader, Senator John Thune. Senator, thanks very much for joining us today.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Maria.
I want to begin, of course, with now the confirmed cabinet members, including the nation's new Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, the confirmed Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and my next guest coming up, the new confirmed Director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, who we will get to shortly. Tell us what you're expecting in moving President Trump's agenda with these new confirmations.
Well, we need them in place, Maria. I think, as you know, in order to implement that agenda, you've got to have new leadership in those departments and agencies. And, of course, we're starting with the national security positions, which are critically important with everything that's going on in the world and everything that's going on at our southern border, which is why it was important that we get Governor Noem in at DHS. But as we move forward, we've got Treasury, Bessent coming up, Sean Duffy at DOT, a whole bunch more that we're teeing up to get done. And it's just really important that they get in place, Maria, because, you know, you have a window of time. This doesn't come along all that often and sometimes doesn't last that long. And so we want to make sure the president has his team in place so he's able to deliver on the agenda that he talked with the American people about and that they voted for in November.
Yeah, I'd like to look ahead to the confirmation hearings coming up, but I'm glad you mentioned timing. Because, Senator, why haven't we seen more confirmations sooner? It certainly feels like the 53 Senate majority Republicans are allowing the 47 Senate minority Democrats to confirm the confirmation hearing process. Is that right?
Well, actually, we're ahead of schedule. We're going back to what is the Obama standard. Obama got 12 of his cabinet nominees through in 15 days. It took Trump 43 days to get his first 12 through back in 2017. So we are pushing hard, and obviously there are constraints that are imposed by the rules of the Senate. The minority in the Senate has ways that can slow things down and drag it out. But we're actually, at the current point, ahead of the Obama standard. And so we're going to keep moving aggressively, moving quickly, forcing people to stay and to take votes on weekends, which we did this weekend. And we'll get them in place as quickly as we possibly can. But we are on the schedule that we laid out, and one that I think enables these folks to get through the process in time to deliver for the president, for the American people.
Okay, terrific. President Trump and the First Lady, of course, visiting storm-hit North Carolina and fire-ravaged Los Angeles, pledging to help. Tell me about that. How much aid are you expecting to commit to the California wildfires, and how did that change the conversation and the plans on your upcoming reconciliation?
Well, we just did, as you know, a big package for North Carolina before the end of the year, and so we've sort of refilled the FEMA account, and we'll see what the request comes in from California. But obviously, the Trump team will have to vet that, determine what they want to ask Congress for in terms of resources. And I suspect there's going to be a lot of scrutiny given to make sure that we're doing this in a way that is responsive to the need in California, but also responsive and responsible to the American taxpayer. So we'll take a look at that. What can ride on that, we will see. Obviously, we have to finish up all the spending bills from last year because the Democrats left us with that mess. We have a pile up at the end of the year. We haven't even funded, FY25, which we're currently in the middle of. And then we've got the fiscal year 26 budget. We got reconciliation, which is the vehicle that enables us to get a lot of things, the things that we want to get done on energy, on the economy, on the border, on military readiness. Those are all things that are sitting ahead of us here, Maria, and we're going to work aggressively to get it all done. But it's not obviously going to be easy, and how it all gets packaged together is still something that we are discussing with the president and his team and with our colleagues in the House of Representatives.
So would the conversation change with the amount of money needed for Los Angeles? President Trump the other day said the California wildfires changed everything.
I think that it did, and obviously it's a timing issue, and we have a lot of stuff, as I said, stacked up. We have a March 14th deadline that if we don't fund the government for this current year that we're in, the government shuts down. We got the reconciliation hanging out there. We got a debt limit we've got to deal with, and so how we piece it together and put it together is a subject of conversation right now, but I can assure you one thing: we will be working together as a team in a unified way to make sure that we deliver for the American people, address the needs that are out there in some of these really disaster-damaged areas, but also make sure that we're addressing the concerns the American taxpayers have about the amount of spending in Washington, D.C. in these last few years under Biden and Harris, and getting us on a different fiscal track.
Absolutely. And of course, that includes the tax policy part of this as well.
Right.
Let me get your take on the appropriate offsets that you would consider. Given now you've got some of your colleagues saying, I cannot vote for the tax portion of whether it's a funding bill or a reconciliation bill unless an increase in the SALT deduction is included.
Right, and the so-called SALT caucus is, pressing hard to obviously get a change in that. We're looking at, in the context of tax reform and the big package, obviously extending the current existing tax law, some other things that the president's talked about, and hopefully a reconciliation bill will also include a significant amount of spending cuts, among other things, energy policy, all things border policy that we want to get done through reconciliation, which enables us in the Senate to do it at a 51 vote majority instead of 60, which is what the more typical scenario is in the Senate. But all those things are going to have to be packaged together. And I guess my hope is that as we move through this process, we will do it in a way that enables us to get all the votes that we need in the House of Representatives, and it's a narrow margin there, including the SALT caucus, on board with whatever it is we do. But we need to make sure that we are delivering on for the American people and preventing what will be a $4.5 trillion tax increase next year if we don't act by the end of the year. So we are on task on that, and moving forward, how we do it is still a matter of conversation.
Are you considering specific offsets?
Well, we are. Obviously, there's a long list of things that we're looking at, and again, it becomes a function. The number you have to pay attention to in the House is 218, and in the Senate it's 51, because it's how much can you do and still get the votes that are necessary to pass something in both the House and the Senate. I'm somebody who likes to go big and bold. We don't get this opportunity very often, and like I said earlier, it sometimes doesn't last very long, where you have unified control of the government and an opportunity to use budget reconciliation. So we should use it aggressively on tax policy, on energy policy, on border policy, and on the military, as we have talked about doing. And ensure that all those things get done in a way that keeps America safe, make sure that America is ready to deal with whatever crisis we face around the world, strengthens our economy, and makes us energy dominant. I mean, these are all things, objectives, again, the president has articulated that he campaigned on, the American people expect us to deliver. And so we are in the process of figuring that out and trying to determine, again, the two numbers to remember: 218 in the House, 51 in the Senate. That's, in the end, that's what it's going to take to get this done.
Senator, as we close out here, what do you want to say about the bold agenda President Trump has put forth? I'm just back from the World Economic Forum, where we heard incredible optimism, and the president has talked about the Panama Canal, Greenland. He's also talked about changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. In just a few days, of course, also including announcing $1.1 trillion in new investment into America, $600 billion by the Saudis alone. I just want to get your take on what is needed now with regard to defense, given the national security concerns around Pete Hegseth's confirmation. What are you looking for in terms of specifics in bulking up America's defense?
Well, obviously, our Navy, and if you look at the number of ships we have relative to our adversaries, particularly China, that's something the president is interested in, in an American Iron Dome concept. But frankly, the thing we've got to do, Maria, is we've got to increase the top line. We have underfunded, and in the Biden budget, there wasn't a single Biden budget that kept up with the rate of inflation when it comes to the military. And so we've got some making up to do. We need to spend it wisely and well and make sure that we're investing in our military in a way that keeps our warfighter capable for whatever the threat metrics is out there that we're dealing with. But, you know, in the end, it's all about keeping the country strong economically, and the things that the president is doing and the things he's talking about. I think there's a very compelling argument on Panama, a very compelling argument on Greenland, and an optimism in America that we haven't seen in a long time. I think this has been a sluggish country, a country that's been bogged down under the weight of government regulation and red tape and taxation. And this is a president and a team working with him in the House and the Senate that wants to liberate the American people and investors. I mean, one of the reasons you see other countries, Saudis and others, wanting to invest in America is because they see America now as an attractive place to invest, knowing full well that they're going to have a different environment, economic environment to deal with when it comes to taxes and regulation and energy and a whole range of other issues. We want America to be the magnet, and I think that with these policies it will be.
That is just terrific, Senator. Real quick on Scott Bessent, how important will the crypto legislation be in next week's hearing?
Well, I think that obviously crypto is playing an increasingly important role in our economy. There's a lot of interest in how do we legislate around it, create sort of a framework for digital currencies to expand and grow. And we're considering that. There are a couple of legislative solutions that have been proposed, and clearly Secretary Bessent will have a lot to say about what that looks like. And so we'll be working closely with him and with the president and his team to fashion something that addresses the crypto world and what has become an increasingly, I think, attractive place for a lot of Americans and other people around the world to invest.
Senator, it's great to have you today.
Yes, crypto is becoming really wild. But today, Bitcoin went down to about 99K. So, first off, this 4 years would be legendary for crypto. If you didn't know, you better know. Okay. And Trump coin, it's fallen a lot. So if you got in when it was like $2, $3, $4, you definitely made bank. But for now, of course, like fear of missing out. That's why people bought it. And of course, fear of not getting their money back. People are trying to get out. So it's kind of like maybe chill out for now. I would advise you to chill out for now, but you're free to do whatever you want to do. But of course, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and stuff like that, you can put your money, invest in there. But of course, this is not a financial advice. But with that being said, you've heard about the Colombia tariff. He said he wasn't going to take back the illegal migrant flight. And Trump was like, oh, okay, we are going to tariff the hell out of you. And he said, you know what? I was joking, okay? I am going to take the criminals with my presidential jet, okay? With my presidential plane. So, like I always say, okay, well, not me. Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. The Colombian president felt like he could just say, you know what? I'm not going to take the criminals from you. Who do you think you are, Trump? And Trump said, yeah, you goddamn right. I am Trump. And I'm going to tariff you. I'm going to seize your bank accounts. You wouldn't be able to do business in the United States. No visas for Colombians. And every government officials that have United States visa would be revoked. My boy said, you know what? I was joking. I would take the illegal criminals from your country with my presidential plane.
Moments ago, President Donald Trump says he has issued his first tariff on Colombia. after 2 U.S. deportation flights of undocumented migrants were not allowed to land in Colombia. CNN's Steve Contorno is joining us now live from Florida. Steve, tell us more.
Yeah, Fred, just moments ago, Donald Trump reacting to the news that Colombia had blocked planes carrying undocumented migrants from delivering those individuals back to their home country, and Trump now retaliating with tariffs and threats of more tariffs. He said in a post on social media, quote, "I was just informed that the 2 repatriation flights from the United States with a large number of illegal criminals were not allowed to land in Colombia. This order was given by Colombia's socialist president, Gustavo Petro, who is already very unpopular amongst his people. Petro's denial of these flights has jeopardized the national security and public safety of the United States." So he has then goes on to say that he is taking some action against the Colombian government, including a 25% tariff on goods coming from Colombia immediately, and he's threatening to raise that to up to 50% next week. He also is calling for a travel ban and immediate visa revocations on the Colombian government officials and sanctions on party members and family members that support the Colombian government. So, Fred, this is an early example of how Donald Trump's immigration crackdown is already colliding with his foreign policy and trade proposals, and the first of maybe more to come, Fred.
And then, Steve, how immediate are we talking?
Well, he says in the post that these the 25% tariffs are, quote, an emergency and will go into place immediately. And then in 1 week, the 25% tariff will be raised to 50%, which would be quite a steep climb. Of course, Trump has already proposed sweeping tariffs on many of the U.S.'s trade partners, including a 25% trade tariff on Mexico and Canada that he says might go into effect next month. He is also promising a trade tariff on goods coming from China in recent weeks if they don't negotiate a new deal with the United States. So clearly this has been top of mind for Donald Trump for more than a year. He has said he will use tariffs to get the international players to act in the best interest of the United States and to raise revenue for the country. And we are starting to see him use them as a sort of stick to try to get countries to do the U.S.'s bidding. Fred.
Okay, Steve Contorno, thank you so much. We'll check back with you. So all of these policies are already deterring some migrant groups from continuing their journey to the U.S. as well. CNN correspondent Rafael Romo is joining me now with details on that. Before we get to that, Rafael, I know you've been in contact with a number of people in Colombia, not necessarily in the last few minutes that this just happened, but in general, the kinds of imports that would come from Colombia to the U.S. involves food. Yeah, and the tariffs then being imposed near immediately, according to, Trump's directive here, would mean any kinds of products would cost more to Americans.
That's
from
right.
Colombia.
There's a very long commercial relationship between the two countries. And as far as I can remember, in the last few decades, the relationship has been very good. We're talking about a lot of agricultural products, bananas, a lot of tropical fruits that we consume in the United States that come from Colombia. And so if you start seeing the beginning of a trade war between the two countries, is going to affect not only Colombia as a producer, but also a lot of consumers here in the United States. Now, when you look at this whole issue, you need to look at the numbers. Facts first. During its first week in office, the Trump administration has arrested just over 1,400 undocumented immigrants. At least those are the figures that were publicly released by authorities on January 23rd, 24th, and 25th. During the same period, Fred, an additional 1,243 undocumented migrants already detained in jails around the country have been identified for removal. But U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement data shows the total of removals for last year was over 271,000, which means during President Biden's last year, the average was more than 5,000 deportations per week compared to 2,600 this past week. Regardless of the pace of removals, the rhetoric is already having an impact on would-be immigrants. CNN spoke with some migrants in Guatemala who changed their mind about pursuing their American dream after learning two things, Fred. One, the U.S.-Mexico border was closed for asylum seekers. And two, the application to apply for asylum, known as CBP-1, was shut down in Donald Trump's first day in office. In other words, even if the number of deportations is not higher than before, it seems like some migrants, at least the ones from Central America, are already deciding on their own to go back out of fear that if they reach the U.S. southern border, their effort will not pay off. This is what the migrants told us.
That's what's driving me to go back. Because I can't press forward, not anymore. I have to find a way to return to Honduras. That's what's driving me to go back. Because I can't press forward, not anymore.
I mean, I don't know this person, okay? It's not like I know his character or if he's a good or bad person. But look, you cannot save everybody, okay? You could never save everybody. Now, if this man had come in here and does something bad, you would just say R.I.P. Okay, just like they did to Laken Riley. I'm not saying this guy. I'm saying, what if, just what if he came in here and did something really bad, like setting a woman ablaze on the subway in New York, you know? But you just never know. You just never know.
I have to find a way to return to Honduras.
And in case you didn't catch the last thing the migrant from Honduras said, he told our reporter that he left his home country on January 20th, the very same day of the inauguration. On the other hand, there are at least two countries in the Western Hemisphere that are blocking deportation flights. It is not a surprise that Venezuela is doing so, since its relations with the U.S. have been frosty for years. But earlier today, and this is what we were talking about at the beginning, Fred, Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced he's also blocking the U.S. military flights, saying, quote, the U.S. cannot treat Colombian migrants as criminals. I deny the entry of American planes carrying Colombian migrants into our territory. The United States must establish a protocol for the dignified treatment of migrants before we receive them. And as we reported Saturday, both Mexico and Guatemala said they will allow U.S. military flights transporting their citizens back home. One minor point that I would like to add, there's already a summit being called by Latin American countries to discuss the issue of migration and what's happening here in the United States.
And this is interesting. All of this is happening really right now. It's unfolding as we are sitting here. So with these U.S. military flights, we saw from the White House pictures, yesterday and the day before, that they were departing with migrants. And now our understanding is those that were landing in Colombia or expecting to land in Colombia today, they will have to turn around. They wouldn't even be able to land on soil to even refuel. Any kind of refueling is going to happen in the air, making their way back to the U.S. And then what we don't know is what happens to all of the people who are on these planes, back on U.S. soil, presumably, if that's where they end up, on these U.S. military flights.
And there's a shortage of beds already. It's a problem that the U.S. has had, not right now. It's the same problem that we've seen in previous administrations. And remember, one of the largest groups coming to the U.S. in the last few years was Venezuelans. Well, guess what? The relationship between the two countries is so bad that Venezuela says, no, we're not going to take any flights whatsoever, whether they are our citizens or not. And so that tells you a lot about what's going on here. Also, what's going to happen to the migrants coming from across the world. Migrants coming from China, which the relationship with the U.S. is not the greatest. Migrants from countries like Nepal. How is the U.S. going to transport all of those people on the other side of the world? But again, very, very concerning, the fact that it seems like we're at the beginning of a trade war between Colombia and the U.S., and that may include some other countries in the near future.
Interesting. All right.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. With that being said, I want you guys to see this picture right here. Trump is such a troll, yo. He is a troll. Oh my God. Uh, Take a look at this picture. Trump posted this picture on his social media, Truth Social, and of course, Instagram. This is so gangster, yo. Fafo. F around and find out. Just F around and find out. Yeah, you go find out. Tell you that much. You are going to find out. Isn't it great that the greatest country in the world has the toughest, baddest motherfucker? Literally, like the baddest motherfucker, really, in the White House. Such a blessing, yo. Such a blessing. Such a blessing. And I'm proud to have voted for him, man. I am so proud to have voted for him. All right. I want you guys to listen to this clip, okay? Of Tom Holman literally teaching this ABC reporter.
To go back to those military flights going south, as you said, we have never seen that before. Is that going to be a
Of course, Tom Holman, the border czar, cooks another ABC reporter.
I want to go back to those military flights going south. As you said, we have never seen that before. Is that going to be a constant commitment from the U.S. military every single day to take deportees out?
Yes.
So is this what we will see every single day, ending in what the president has promised is millions and millions being deported?
Yes. But you're going to see the number steadily increase, the number of arrests nationwide as we open up the aperture. Right now it's concentrating public safety threats, national security threats. That's a smaller population. So we're going to do this on priority base, as President Trump's promised, but as that aperture opens, there'll be more arrests nationwide.
When you talk about the aperture opening, the estimates of perhaps those who have been convicted or arrested in the past, 700,000 to over 1 million. So after you do that, then you go after everybody who is there illegally.
If you're in the country illegally, you're on the table, because it's not okay to violate laws of this country. You got to remember, every time you enter this country illegally, you violated a crime under Title 8, United States Code 1325. It's a crime. So if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem. And that's why I'm hoping those who are in the country illegally who have not been ordered removed by the federal judge.
He knows his job, okay? You cannot come into the United States illegally and expect to just coast. There's no coasting for you, yo. It took me 5 years to become a United States citizen. Go out, wait your turn, come in here legally, okay? Come inside legally. They actually want you to come into the United States legally because the United States needs immigrants. You can argue about that fact, but the fact is, the truth actually is, the United States needs immigrants. But you cannot come in here illegally. Okay, that cannot be your first move. I mean, when you come in here illegally, being your first move, what do you expect? Meaning you're not even fit to be in the United States because you already came in illegally in the first place. Yeah, you're going to have to go back home and retry. It's just what it is. With that being said, thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency, never give up on yourself, never give up on your dreams, never give up on God. Believe in yourself, believe in your dreams, believe in God. So every time I'm trying to read comment that says, Genesis, get out of our country, somebody deletes it or blocks the person. I like comments like that because I like to talk to people like that. You can cry, okay? You can cry. Genesis, leave the country. I'm home, dog. I'm home, dog. I'm home, dog. All right, ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. Have a wonderful night. I'm going to go back to wallow in my sorrow because I just lost a loved one. Yep. I will be wallowing in sorrow for a long time. I'll tell you that much. For a long, long time. But God is great. God is great. That's all I can tell you. Never quit, never give up, keep going, show up regardless of how hard it is. Keep pushing forward. Never stop, okay? If you are going through a loss right now, I totally understand you. I promise you that. I am going through loss right now. I lost a very close person to me. Probably my best friend. It's not even probably. They are. This person was my best friend, and God said, "Well, it's time to come. It's time to come home." And they left. So I'm gonna go back, go cry some more, and keep life going. Okay. Stay strong, y'all. I love you guys. See you soon. I may not be here tomorrow because um this person has to be cremated tomorrow or next. So I may be doing that. I may not be here for like 2 or 3 days. But just know while I'm not here, I will be crying my eyes out. Tell you that much. I will be crying my eyes out. Like, you know when you've cried so hard that you can't even cry no more. Like tears are not even coming out no more. Your eyes just swollen and stuff. And people are like, but just bury yourself in your sorrow. I'm talking about myself, okay? Do not be sorrowful, okay? I want you guys to be happy. But this time for me is a lot. But it is what it is. You know, it's just it is what it is. Okay? It is what it is. God is great regardless of whatever. God is great. One day I am going to pass this level of sorrow and get to the other side. If there is the other side. If I can't, because I don't know if I can make it, but if I do make it, I'll see you guys on the other side. Okay? I love you guys. Stay strong. I'm signing out.